Hello everyone, welcome to Earth Archives. Please take a moment to subscribe, like, comment and share, and don't forget to hit the notification bell. Thank you. Today we are going to uncover the lie, the history of food labels, and the truth behind corporate manipulation. Nowadays, when we buy processed foods in supermarkets, large stores, or even convenience stores, the packaging is always labeled with its contents. But have you ever wondered when food labels first appeared and what caused their creation? Eliminating product label fraud. The progressive era, which spanned from around 1890 to 1920, was a time when corruption was rampant in the United States, and counterfeit and substandard goods were widespread. Major disasters occurred frequently, and social conflicts were sharp. During this period, the US embarked on a series of institutional reforms that laid the foundation for the modern nation. One of the key areas was preventing consumer fraud, such as stopping food producers from substituting sand for sugar or misleading consumers with vague or confusing product labeling. For instance, mixing up pepper and chili powder. This idea was put forward to protect consumers from fraud and harmful, dangerous ingredients. In 1906, the U.S. Congress enacted the Pure Food and Drug Act, the first consumer protection law of the 20th century. This led to the creation of the FDA, Food and Drug Administration. Fundamentally, this law was a truthful labeling law aimed at raising standards in the food and drug industries by banning adulterated or misleading labels. At the beginning of the 20th century, packaged food, which is now a common sight, was still a new concept. Most foods were traded and purchased in bulk, with little to no packaging, let alone boxing or canning. During the progressive era, packaged goods began to appear on the market. Due to the convenience of packaging for trade and handling, these products were sold at a premium price. This led to some unscrupulous competitors who sold products in original packaging at lower prices, a practice known as short-weight packaging. This involved reducing the contents of the package to make it appear as if it contained the same amount, allowing the product to be sold at a cheaper price. To address such deceptive practices, U.S. legislation took action. In 1913, the famous Gould-Net Weight Amendment was passed. This law required that all packaged foods clearly display the quantity, weight, size, and measurement method on the visible portion of the packaging. With this, the United States became the first country in the world to mandate food labeling. The Net Weight Amendment played an important role in changing manufacturing processes, procurement models, consumer demand, and retail structures. It also contributed to identifying and curbing the growth of packaging fraud. In many ways, the amendment achieved the consumer protection goals set by the 1906 Pure Food and Drug Act, completing the consumer protection chain. Significant changes in food labeling. 20 years after the Gould-Net Weight Amendment, in 1938, the Food, Drug and Cosmetic Act mandated that all artificial flavorings, colorants and chemical preservatives, ingredients that had raised early concerns, must be listed on product labels. Part of this act allowed the FDA to start issuing food standards to promote honest and fair treatment of consumer interests. It was only after the enactment of the 1938 Act that consumers truly took center stage in the realm of food regulation. After World War I, the importance of food fortification in preventing certain nutrition-related diseases was gradually confirmed. For example, diseases like beriberi, caused by a lack of vitamin B1, and scurvy, caused by a vitamin C deficiency, became key examples of the need for dietary intervention. In 1940, at a hearing on flour standards, the FDA, based on recommendations from the American Medical Association and the National Academy of Sciences, established standards for fortified flour, the fortification of vitamins and minerals to appropriate levels. This method was later extended to standardized white bread. Due to the standardization, it was no longer necessary to list all ingredients on the label. Only optional ingredients were required, and consumers could look up nutritional components as needed. The 1969 Food, Nutrition and Health Conference at the White House marked the end of an era when the FDA strictly controlled food supply standards. During the conference, a suggestion was made that the FDA should shift its focus away from the composition of food ingredients and place more emphasis on enhancing nutritional value, enabling the public to be informed about the nutritional benefits of various ingredients. The goal was to use technology to improve nutrition. As a result, the FDA began focusing on developing a system that would provide consumers with more information, enabling them to make informed and rational decisions about their food choices. A new era of nutritional food labels. In 1973, the FDA introduced its first set of regulations for food nutrition labels. These rules applied to foods that contained added nutrients or made nutritional claims in their labels or advertisements. For instance, if a product claimed to be high in protein, the FDA would require manufacturers to provide detailed nutritional information. However, this information was often presented in a less conspicuous manner, such as in small print or in obscure corners of the label. Although it was still in its infancy, this marked the beginning of the first generation of nutritional labels. Progress was slow at the time, largely due to the relatively low public interest in diet and health during the 1970s. In 1977, the U.S. Senate released the Dietary Goals for the United States report, a milestone document that recommended Americans reduce their intake of sugar, salt, and saturated fats, while increasing consumption of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, and healthier foods. Around the same time, the U.S. Department of Agriculture was busy crafting the first official dietary guidelines for Americans, which closely mirrored the recommendations in the Senate report. Americans should eat more fruits and vegetables and reduce their intake of salt and sugar. The formation of modern nutrition labels. In the 1980s, the Center for Science in the Public Interest, CSPI, petitioned the FDA, highlighting the widespread issue of deceptive health and nutrition claims in the U.S. These fraudulent practices were particularly concerning with regard to sodium, sugar, and fats, with increasing collusion between food manufacturers and interest groups. Despite efforts from CSPI, consumer advocacy organizations, and health departments, it wasn't until the passage of the Nutrition Labeling and Education Act, NLEA, in 1990 that the U.S. made nutrition labeling mandatory. This legislation also introduced the familiar nutrition facts panel we see today, signaling the beginning of a significant shift in the food industry. According to the FDA, it wasn't until 1994 that nutrition labels first appeared on packaged foods, gradually becoming one of the most universally recognized graphics worldwide. Now let's take a look at the deceptive practices used by food companies with their so-called no additives labels. 1. Sugar-free labels. Almost all products claiming to be sugar-free don't actually lack sweetness. They typically don't contain table sugar, sucrose, or cane sugar, but instead use alternative sweeteners such as sugar alcohols or artificial sweeteners. These include substances like saccharin, aspartame, and sucralose, which were discussed in our earlier episode on sugar. Most sugar-free products are chemically processed, and one common ingredient is maltodextrin, derived from corn. This substance is broken down in a lab using enzymes, aiming to improve digestion. However, the issue lies in its rapid digestion, which causes insulin levels to spike just like pure sugar would. What about sugar alcohols? They too can raise blood sugar levels. A side effect of these sweeteners is that they often trigger cravings for more carbohydrates, leading many to become addicted to these so-called healthy foods, unable to break the habit. Additionally, sugar alcohols have mild laxative effects. In conclusion, while sugar is undeniably harmful, These alternatives aren't much better either. 2. Fat-free labels. The media bombards us with the idea that if we avoid fat, we won't get fat. This is the trick behind fat-free labeled products. Research shows that reducing fat in your diet has little to no impact on reducing the fat on your body. Why? Because food manufacturers may remove fat, but they replace it with carbohydrates, especially refined sugars or processed proteins, to mimic the taste of fat. But these replacements do nothing to help your body. Studies also indicate that long-term low-fat diets offer minimal results. For example, a 2015 Harvard Medical School report revealed that low-fat diets are no more effective than other diets that include fats when it comes to weight control. The main reason for this is that fat-free foods are often loaded with refined sugars. Take fat-free or low-fat yogurt, which can contain as much sugar as a scoop of ice cream. A 2013 report also pointed out that low-fat diets can lead to increased triglycerides and a reduction in good cholesterol, HDL, both of which raise the risk of heart disease. Take, for example, the popular American brand Jeff's Reduced Fat Peanut Butter. It only contains 60% peanuts, with the remaining 40% being solid corn syrup, sugar, pea protein, and fully hydrogenated oils. This is essentially a health hazard. In simple terms, fat-free foods don't promote satiety. They make you eat more. This is part of the food industry's deceptive tactics. 3. Trans fat-free labels. Trans fats are substances you absolutely should avoid, yet, unfortunately, they are incredibly difficult to escape today. How is that possible when food packaging clearly labels them? If you knew that the foods you consume probably contain trans fats, how would you feel? The reality is that processed foods often contain trans fats, and you've likely encountered emulsifiers such as mono and diglycerides. When these additives enter the body, they quickly transform into triglycerides, as mentioned earlier. However, the regulations don't require these foods to be labeled as containing trans fats, and they can even be labeled as trans fat-free. Irony, right? Not surprisingly, food manufacturers exploit this loophole. If you consume processed foods regularly, it's almost certain that you're ingesting trans fats. Even mainstream restaurants and fast food chains can't escape it. For instance, McDonald's uses trans fats in their burger buns, milkshakes, ice cream, and cookies. Other fast food chains like Burger King do the same. Why? Because it helps reduce costs and extend shelf life. This reminds me of a certain experiment where fast food items from mainstream chains were left at room temperature for 2 years. After opening, they looked just as fresh as when they were first made. Does this make you reconsider eating fast food? 4. Gluten-free labels. First, it's important to note that the medical community has confirmed that there are individuals who suffer from gluten or wheat intolerance, as well as celiac disease. However, these conditions affect only about 1% of the population and require a professional diagnosis. Despite this, many food manufacturers exploit this trend, placing gluten-free labels on a wide range of products on supermarket shelves, everything from bread and pasta to crackers. The gluten-free movement has even become a popular theme promoted by celebrities, making it a trend in itself, exactly what these food manufacturers aim for. This gluten-free trend has given rise to 2 myths. Removing gluten helps with weight loss. Sound familiar? It's almost identical to the low-fat tactic. However, there is no scientific evidence supporting the idea that removing gluten from your diet will lead to better health. Of course, for people with celiac disease, eliminating gluten significantly improves digestion and overall health. But for non-celiac individuals, the weight loss observed from eating gluten-free products has nothing to do with gluten. It is more likely due to the reduction of processed junk foods, which just so happen to contain gluten. By cutting out high-calorie foods like fried items and pizza, people naturally experience better health. But this is unrelated to gluten itself. In the end, it's clear that these food manufacturers are constantly searching for loopholes in regulations, using people's health concerns to make a profit. As for what happens to the consumer's health, well, that's not their concern. All they see is money and profit.